All right. This is going to be a whole lot of fun. Tom Pelissaro and Ian Rappaport yesterday reporting that DeMeco Ryans is very much interested in the Texans, and the Texans are very much interested in DeMeco Ryans, something which a lot of people wanted you to believe was impossible, because why on earth would DeMeco Ryans, highly sought after by multiple teams, want to choose the lowly Houston Texans? It couldn't be. Don't you know? They fired 3 head coaches in 3 years. How could anybody want to go to a team who's fired 3 head coaches in 3 years? DeMeco is currently coaching for the San Francisco 49ers, who are playing for a championship over these next couple weeks. DeMeco is playing for a team who fired 3 coaches in 3 years. Jim Harbaugh, I know they tried to pass it off. They didn't fire him. Jim Harbaugh says they fired him. Jim Tom Sula, and then Chip Kelly. Then they hired Kyle Shanahan. So I think it's telling that a lot of people must think so lowly of themselves that then when they go to a job and they interview for it, they think, well, why did the incompetent couple guys that just got fired before me get fired? I couldn't possibly be as good as David Culley. Do you think Kyle Shanahan thought, well, gosh, oh man, if they can fire Jim Tom Sula after just 1 year, then how on earth is old Kyle Shanahan going to make it? Because these guys got cojones. They know what they're doing. They expect to go in and they expect to win. So that part has been way, way, way overblown. I will say, in addition to that I do think that DeMeco Ryans, aside from definitely having more than 1 year to prove himself here, these last 2 coaching hires were done under weird circumstances. The Texans deserve a lot of blame for getting themselves into those weird circumstances, but people have curiously failed to mention that those last 2 hires were made while Deshaun Watson was holding the team hostage. So let's not act and pretend like those hires weren't made under very curious circumstances and very adverse circumstances, which for the candidates themselves, this just hasn't been a normal situation. But it does afford DeMeco an extra bit of a grace period, I think, because he's DeMeco Ryans. He is beloved by this fan base. Should that matter? Certainly not. But with this team and where they are right now, I think that anybody would say, yeah, you want a coach to be able to come in and have some time to either develop a young quarterback. If they choose not to draft a quarterback this year or go another route, then you've got 1 more year of hopefully showing a lot of improvements on defense, on the offensive line, adding some talent, all those things. I think there is more of a grace period with DeMeco in the eyes of the fan base than there might be with some of these other candidates. I don't know if DeMeco takes that into account at all, but it's certainly one thing that I hope he gets if he needs it. I don't know. They'll probably win like 13 games next year. One of the other big objections was that, of course, Cal McNair, the owner of the Texans, well, he's a monster, isn't he? There's no way that DeMeco Ryans would want to go work for Cal McNair, who I've read various little flyby takes about. Look, DeMeco Ryans has known Cal McNair since 2006. DeMeco Ryans has a better understanding and estimation of Cal McNair than various people who love to make themselves look gallant and just by lobbing fireballs into the Houston Texans facility from afar. DeMeco Ryans has a better understanding of Cal McNair, what he's about, what he intends and wants to do, than a lot of other people who have zero familiarity with him. Third big objection is, well, certainly DeMeco will just want to go to the Broncos, right? If the Broncos even decide that he's worthy of them, because the Broncos are such a premier destination. I don't know why people are having a hard time figuring this out. The Broncos have had 6 losing seasons in a row. They currently are being dragged underwater by a washed-up quarterback in Russell Wilson who has an exorbitant and very restrictive contract. This is not a great destination. I know that Colin Cowherd and Sean Payton had a grand plan for Russell Wilson that included, showing him highlights of back when he used to be good with the Seahawks. Or, hey, he needs to spend more time with the fellas. Can you imagine being a Broncos player and finding out that your new coach is coming in and he wants Russell Wilson to spend more time with you? I would demand a trade immediately. I'm not hanging out with that weirdo, okay? Sean Payton, I don't care what you say. The plan that Colin Cowherd and Sean Payton had for resurrecting Russell Wilson apparently was to have Russell Wilson stop acting so much like Russell Wilson. That all of a sudden he was going to be a guy that just could kick it with the fellas and be a joy to be around. Objection. DeMeco Ryans once sued the Texans. Yes, he did. He sued them for $10 million, and it was because of what he alleged were unsafe working conditions. I would say that those were weird working conditions on that old tray system they had at Energy Stadium, and DeMeco Ryans tore his Achilles tendon while playing there. He sued the team. This is not the kind of lawsuit that I think needs to have long-standing ill will on either side, and I don't know if there ever was. I mean, I'm sure the Texans and DeMeco didn't see eye to eye on this, obviously, but if you can liken it more to a workers' comp case or something like that, this is not the same as charging somebody with libel or saying that they consciously and intentionally wronged you somehow. And I never thought this was an issue. A lot of people thought I was an idiot for that. At least as of now, it looks like it's not the issue. So I may be an idiot, but it's for completely different reasons in my assessment of this lawsuit. And that's something. Objection. Isn't Nick Caserio, the general manager, a big old control freak? I haven't seen it. Frankly, I don't understand or know why he gets that reputation. I think it's written into his contract that he has control over the roster, but that's something that good agents negotiate for guys. I think when Nick Caserio was first flirting with the Texans and the Texans were accused of tampering, Nick Caserio would have been coming to Houston to work alongside Bill O'Brien and the departed Jack Easterby. I think in that situation, it's very unlikely that he would have had complete and total control. I think he would have been just fine. And I think that DeMeco and Nick Caserio will get along smashingly together. I know Nick Caserio to a certain degree. I've watched him operate. I know DeMeco Ryans because I played with him. I was a 10th year veteran when he was a rookie, and he remains one of the most impressive human beings I've ever met as a football player in terms of work ethic, maturity, leadership, all that stuff. And it's only gotten better over time. I think that those two would complement each other well. I think that DeMeco has obviously the defensive background, his experience as a player. Nick Caserio has his experience as an offensive coach and as a personnel guy. And I think that they would very much appreciate that there's somebody there covering their own blind spots. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about that one iota. The only thing I'm hoping is that Nick Caserio can feel that. And people have asked, well, why does there need to be a second interview if the team knows DeMeco so well and DeMeco knows the McNairs? Well, because Caserio doesn't know DeMeco. And I think Caserio needs to get a comfort level. It's no secret that Caserio seems to be fond of Jonathan Gannon. And I could imagine that maybe that's who he still feels most comfortable with. If you spend enough time around DeMeco, Nick, I'm telling you, you'll get super comfortable. He is a hell of a guy. Another objection people have had to DeMeco Ryans coming to coach the Texans has been that the Texans shouldn't base this hire on sentimentality. I 100% agree with you. They should not base this hire on sentimentality. I do think that there is a larger degree of comfort and understanding of DeMeco Ryans' personality than they could possibly have with any of these other candidates, simply because they haven't spent that much time with these other candidates. So that's not sentimentality, but I think there is a familiarity aspect that gives you a comfort level. One thing that isn't an objection, but does shed a little bit more light on exactly why DeMeco might still very much like the Texans that people might not realize is that, yes, not only did he play for Houston, but his wife is from Houston. He started a home for children here in Houston. There are certain benefits to being in the same town as your wife with your family when you're working 16-hour days as an NFL coach. I think it's a lot of extra help for your wife. It's a lot of extra family support for your kids, and there are a lot of non-football reasons that DeMeco might want to be back here. Look, if DeMeco still has a house here in Houston, I will personally volunteer to go out and boot out his renters, if somebody's renting, I'll kick those squatting people off their butts out into the street. Hey, look, they're renting DeMeco Ryans' place. They can afford another place to live. I'm not a monster, but I will kick them out, DeMeco. You say the word. We got to get DeMeco here.